Hello, students. We are going to study the third unit that is prescribed for us. We have to understand the term and the concepts first. It's a kind of a training, and as an example, we are going to study the text. So, the poet Langston Hughes was the first poet that we are going to study, and we have confessional poet Sylvia Plath and three poems by her that we are going to study. But before going into Langston Hughes and Sylvia Plath, it is our first and foremost duty or concern is to study something biographical about Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was born on 1st February 1902 in Joplin. He was the second child. His mother was a school teacher. As we have seen, the father, James Hughes, the father left his family and later on he divorced from his mother. Further on, we have to see he went to Cuba and Mexico to keep himself away from racism in United States. After the separation of his parents, his mother seeking employment, the hardships she faced, the hardships she experienced in the white domination in American society. She, she carried Langston Hughes with her, and that is what it caused a kind of influence on his deep child mind. He was mostly raised by his grandmother and Mary Patterson Langston in Kansas. Though the black American oral tradition and drawing of an activist experiences of her generation, Mary Langston instilled the lasting sense of racial, say, pride. He spent his childhood in Lawrence, Kansas. After the death of his grandmother, he went to live with the family friends, James and Mary Reed, for 2 years. Hughes lived again with his mother in Cary, Lincoln, Illinois. She remarried when he was still an adolescent, and eventually they lived in Cleveland, where Langston Hughes completed his school education. While Langston Hughes was in a grammar school in Lincoln, Hughes was elected the class part. Hughes stated that he thought, because of a stereotype, that African Americans have rhythm, and during high school in Cleveland, he wrote for the school newspaper and edited the yearbook too. He meanwhile started to write and compose his short stories. He experimented in poetry and dramatic plays. His first piece of jazz type of poetry, Whence You Wear Red, was written when he was in high school education. It was during this time that he developed his love for books, his love for creative work, and that further on matured him in becoming the voice of black brotherhood in the American society. His relationship with father were estranged. Hughes was not in good terms with his father. He lived with him in Mexico for a brief span of time in 1919. Langston Hughes later on started living with his father, just in the expectation that his father would support him to attend the Columbia University and do his course. But his father didn't do so. And Hughes realized that instead of his supporting, his father had developed the dislike and hatred for the fellow black brotherhood. He disliked the blacks, and these ideological differences kept them apart for the most of the time. Initially, his father was expected by Langston Hughes to attend the university abroad, at the same time to develop a kind of a brotherhood and fellow sensibility towards the black people. But the differences between father and son widened, and on these grounds, he was definitely estranged from his father. His father expected Langston Hughes to be an engineer, but he could not. He developed already the interest in the creative work of art and in the books. On these grounds, he was willing to provide financial assistance to his son, but Langston Hughes could not do so. But Hughes preferred to be a writer, and that didn't suit to the father's expectations, and that is what he never financed him, supported him financially. Hughes and his father came to a later on compromise that Hughes would study engineering as long as he could attend Columbia. His tuition was provided. Hughes left his father after a year. While at Columbia in 1921, Hughes managed to get B plus grade average, and he left the racial prejudice. His interest revolved around the Harlem Renaissance through his study. So, his major contribution was in the Harlem Renaissance. It was a cultural movement spanned in 1920s. At the time, it was New Negro Movement, named after 1950 anthology of Allen Locke. Though it was centered in the Harlem in the New York City Square, it was mostly French-speaking black writers from Africa and Caribbean colonies who lived in Paris were also influenced by Harlem Renaissance. Harlem Renaissance is generally considered to have spanned from about 1990 to 1930. Many ideas come up during the Harlem Renaissance, but it reached to its zenith, flowering of Negro literature, when James Weldon Johnson preferred to call it. Opportunity was a dedicated journal for Harlem Renaissance. So, Harlem Renaissance was its highest peak of development during 1990 to 1937 in African American culture, especially in creative arts, paintings, many literary movements, musical, theatrical, visual art movements are encompassed under the Harlem Renaissance. The Negro, apart from the white stereotypes that had influenced the black people's relationship with their heritage and order, they also sought to break free from the Victorian moral values and bourgeois shame about the aspects of their lives that might reinforce their racist belief. Harlem Renaissance poets tried to destabilize the white dominancy and the cultural dominancy. They attacked the white cultural basics on which the false ideology is based on. The movement laid the groundwork for all African American literature writers and had an enormous impact not on the black literature or the consciousness worldwide. The Renaissance was not just confined to the Harlem district of New York City, but it also cast a deep serving influence on the symbolic capital and also cultural awakening among the Afro American people. The Negro or the new Negro in America had no thought of assimilating African culture and literature, but he desired to get the recognition for the Harlem Renaissance. He desired to bring the African American culture and literature together, and he desired the recognition. So Langston Hughes was at the top of his highest development during this Harlem Renaissance period, was called as the leader of Harlem Renaissance, who encouraged the Negro, the spirit of encouragement, hope, and democratic values among the intellectuals. And during this time, Langston Hughes cast a deep underlying impact on the fellow black writers, at the same time white writers, to raise their cause. So with these words, Langston Hughes is to be studied. We must know something about Langston Hughes before going into three prescribed books by him in our syllabus. So, with these words, I hope you will read more about Langston Hughes on the internet, available resources, so that you can get the gist of the Harlem Renaissance and Langston Hughes. With these words, thank you.